Okay, I'm just setting up to make sure that everything is going this time. Sorry about the preemptive streams. I didn't intend to stream straight away. I was trying to actually set up, and for some strange reason OBS was kicking in and I wasn't supposed to, but it did. So we've just got 2 minutes out and then I will be starting. I just want to give people time to get in the room. I realise that that's not necessarily going to be the best option for everybody, but I just want to make sure I get it right. Okay, there we go. Put some light on the situation. Is that too much light? Not enough light? It's always hard to know. I'll just move that lamp a little bit further out and turn it so it's not quite so much in my face. Okay, good. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Well, that isn't good, but it should even out eventually. I'll get rid of this. Okay, I do apologise for the messing around that's occurred. I'm now ready. Right, well. Okay, there we go. And it's almost time to start. For some strange reason it is buffering a lot. I don't know why that's doing that. That'll be why people can't jump in. Okay. Right. It is 3 o'clock, so we're going to get started. There's a lot of information to present and I'm going to try to do my best to make it as clear as I possibly can. I do want people to ask questions as I go, and as soon as I get I've completed sort of the process that I've started, I will move on and start dealing with people's questions. And this is not necessarily going to be just about the player and Dungeon Master. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I'm going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e and combat. Now, I did a workshop like this quite a long time ago. It was done on my phone. It didn't turn out quite the way I had hoped, and now I have a webcam and a microphone and I'm using OBS. And so therefore it's making it a little bit easier for me to do that sort of thing. I truthfully had hoped to be able to present you with something a little bit more polished. So this time hopefully it's going to work out well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through a number of encounters or combats, and by all means put your questions in the comments section in the chat live box so that I can get back to you. And then if I don't get back to you straight away, it's simply because I want to lay out a particular situation first before I move on to your question. So don't think I'm going to ignore your questions, because that's not going to happen. So I've selected 4 characters. Each one is from the Dungeons & Dragons 5e starter set. I've selected the rogue, a cleric, the fighter, noble, and I've also selected the wizard. So there's the 4 core classes that you would normally have in your game. And they are going to go and explore a cavern. I'm going to call this just the Caves of Chaos. I believe it is actually called the Caves of Chaos, this particular map. So they are adventuring, they're exploring a location, they come across a cave entrance with a whole lot of skulls in front of it. There's a lot of blood, dry blood that is, that has been there for some time, smeared across the front entrance, and they decide, well, it's probably prudent at this time to try to sneak up and find out what's going on. So the first thing you want to do is you want to start making stealth checks for each of the characters. And what you're trying to do is actually create a group check. So for each character that you have, you're going to make a 20-sided dice roll and add their stealth modifier. So we'll start off with the rogue. We'll do the rogue first. This is the character sheet for the rogue. The rogue has a stealth modifier of 7. I roll my 20-sided dice. I rolled an 18. So 18 plus 7 is 25. So 25 on our stealth check is pretty good. So we'll make a note of that. 25 for our stealth. And then we just move on to the next character, which is going to be the wizard. You make a stealth check for your wizard. And the stealth modifier for a wizard's not that great. It's only a +2. Roll your 20-sided dice. 14 plus 2 is a 16. It's not bad for a wizard. And we keep working our way through the different characters. Now what we're going to do once we've done all of these checks, so the stealth modifier for the cleric is a -1, but there's a star beside it, which means they have disadvantage. So we don't get to roll just a standard dice, we're going to have to roll 2 dice and take the lowest result. Not a good sign. It's a -1. So I got a 7 as my lowest result, -1 is a 6 for the cleric. Okay, and the last check we're going to make is for our fighter. And our fighter has also got a -1 stealth modifier and there's a star beside it, so they're in armor, which means they have disadvantage on that check. So roll your dice, and the lowest I got was a 6, -1 is 5 for the fighter. Now I've got a 6 for the cleric, a 5 for the fighter, the rogue's a 25, and the wizard is a 16. So if anything is actually in there and likely to detect them, that is going to be contested by either an active perception check or a passive check. Normally, if there is something that is trying to be aware of something, I'm going to use something like a passive check rather than making active checks, just to simplify things. Fortunately for the party, the first encounter that's in here is actually got a very low passive perception. It's only a 9, so they will actually almost all of them are successful, half of them. So the rogue and the wizard are successful, the cleric and the fighter are not successful, but only half of the party need to be successful during a stealth check that's a group check to be successful on the check. So they are stealthy, they will be able to get surprise, provided they don't do anything particularly stupid in the process. One of the most common things to have happen at this point is that one of the characters or players will ask to make a perception check. So our perception check for our rogue, now the rogue's probably the most sensible character to utilise in this situation, given they are at the front rather than all the characters that are sitting at the back there. So find your character sheet for the rogue, and the rogue, I'll pull it out for you right now. The rogue has a perception modifier of 0. It's quite peculiar. I don't know why this particular rogue has got such a low perception. It would be sensible to have a higher one. So we're going to roll our dice. It will be a flat roll, and they get 11. So if there's anything hiding in the caverns, that is going to be contested by whatever check is made by the creatures or monsters hiding in there. And 11's not very good. So you can also use the passive check of a character, and the passive perception for the rogue is only a 10. So it would be 10 plus their perception modifier, and because the rogue has only got a 0, it's very, very low. So the chances are they won't see anything, but they are moving with stealth, which is good. So they move up to the cave entrance, and they're trying to sort of keep a low profile. They look inside, and the rogue can see down here that there is a passageway leading in, some sort of statue and can make out some shining runes on the floor or on the ground. And there's a couple of passageways off to the side here. And they have a choice of which way they can go. So moving in, obviously continuing to be quiet. You do not need to keep asking your players to make a stealth check. Usually I just ask for one. If they start doing additional things that are sort of outside of what they were already doing, then maybe you would make them perform another stealth check, but it's not necessary to do it all the time. Not for every single 30 feet, you know, it's not like you're going to move 30 feet, then dash another 30 feet, and then, okay, now it's time to make another stealth check. That would just be too time consuming. Alright, so sneaking in here, they make their way in, and just around the bend is in fact a pile of bones here by the boulders. There's a boulder blocking this passageway here, so they can't get through, and right here, standing ready, well, not so much ready, but just standing there doing nothing, are a pair of skeletons who have small swords. And because they had stealth, and because the passive perception of the skeletons isn't very good, they weren't trying to hide, these guys were. That means that the party will get a surprise round, which is good, because if you're a level 1 and these characters are going to be level 1, the chances are you're going to need every advantage you can get. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by rolling initiative for each of the characters. I'm not necessarily going to bring the character sheets every single time we do this, but I'm going to present them as often as I can so that you can see the numbers on the sheets. So if you're wondering why I'm doing that, that's probably the reason why. Now, if you have questions as I'm going, by all means throw them out there. This particular live stream workshop isn't just for the players or the dungeon masters. I will answer questions right across the board. I'm going to break everything down as clearly as I possibly can. So now that we know that they have surprise, we have to determine who is going to act first. So I'm going to grab the rogue character sheet here, and we look for the initiative. It's at the top here. The initiative for the rogue is nice and high. It's a 3, so we roll a 20-sided dice and add that figure. So I rolled a 10 plus 3, so the rogue has an initiative of 13. Grab our next character sheet, which is going to be our wizard. And our wizard here has an initiative at the top here of plus 2. So I roll a 20-sided dice. I rolled a 2, plus the 2 comes to a 4 for the wizard. So not very high, it's pretty low actually. Grabbing the next character sheet, and this is the cleric. Really low initiative, it's a -1, so roll your 20-sided dice and add that -1. I rolled a 10, and you're going to add your -1, which comes to a 9 for the cleric. And then we grab our fighter, and also has a -1 for initiative at the top here. So roll your 20-sided dice and add your 9. That comes to 9 minus 1 is 8. So the initiative order has been determined for the characters. We still have to determine the initiative order for the monsters, or the skeletons in this case. Now if you have a look at the monster manual on page 272, you'll see the stat block for the skeleton, and you'll notice that there's nothing that references the initiative modifier. That's because you're going to be using the dexterity modifier. In the absence of an initiative modifier, you're going to use the dexterity modifier. So I'm going to grab a dice to roll for that. I'm going to use this dice when I'm rolling for monsters. Hopefully I remember to roll this dice for the monsters and the blue dice for the characters. Well, that's my hope anyway. So I roll my dice for my skeletons. I'm only going to roll once. Even though there's 2 skeletons, I only need to roll 1 initiative. Otherwise it's just too hard to track. So I rolled a 9. And their initiative is a +2. So that's initiative 11 for the DM or the skeletons. So now I can break it down, and it's going to look a little bit like this. So I'm going to just show you my sheet that I've got here. I'm writing all this down as I go. So you'll notice that I've got my numbers from my initiative here. So now I can place them into order to decide who's going to act first. So here the rogue is obviously the highest number, so we're going to go first for the rogue, 13. Next number is going to be the dungeon master, because I got an 11. The next number after 11 is the cleric, so that'll be number 3. It's very hard to write. Oh, there we go, 3. And sorry about that, I'm writing on the side, it's really awkward. Next is the fighter, which is going to be 4th in the order, and then the wizard is unfortunately going to be last and be 5th in the order. So now that I've determined my initiative and I know who has surprise, it's actually up to the characters to take their turns first. Because the skeletons are surprised, they won't get to act in the first round at all. The first round will only be taken up by the player's characters. Now you can also apply different rules. There is a section in the player's handbook that does state that even though your group may have surprise, it is possible for other members to wind up being surprised if they didn't do a particularly good job with their initiative or their stealth. Really, I'm not going to go into that. I'm playing it out normally the way I would deal with it, and this is just to simplify things as much as possible. So starting off with the rogue, we'll deal with that first act. They're going to move up, and they're going to try to get sneak attack damage on the skeleton with their attack. They're going to use their short swords. They draw out their short sword, but they're not going to make that attack just yet. Instead, they're going to use what's called a ready to action. You spend your action and you don't get to act until you stipulate a trigger, and once that trigger is activated, which is this particular character is going to act and attack once somebody is within 5 feet. So I know what you're thinking. What happens if why aren't I giving the rogue advantage? Why is the rogue not getting advantage? It's a surprise round. It's possible to have surprise and get to act during the surprise round. That is absolutely possible. Okay? Always with surprise, you are going to get to act first if you are surprising somebody else. But it doesn't mean that you necessarily have advantage. To have advantage, the Dungeon Master has to give you advantage because of the circumstance, or you have to be unseen. Because the rogue moves out and can be seen by the skeletons, therefore they don't get advantage. So in this case, this rogue is going to not hold their action, because there's no such thing. They're going to ready an action to attack once one of their colleagues gets close enough that they can have their sneak attack damage. So we're going to just remember, okay, we're going to use these dice and make our attack once somebody gets within 5 feet. So that is our rogues taking their turn. Moving on, now next in the initiative order is the DM at 11, but right now they can't do anything. So the skeletons do nothing. Moving on, we go to the cleric. The cleric's next in the initiative order, and the cleric can move up if they wanted to. I think probably the most sensible thing at this present time is not necessarily to cast a spell. We're going to go with keeping it pretty simple for the cleric. They're going to use their war hammer. So they're going to step up 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and this cleric is actually right within striking range. Not within 5 feet of the rogue, but certainly within 5 feet of the enemy being attacked. Now you can, when you ready an action and you stipulate a trigger, you can decide not to take that action if you want, because it's possible that other characters will move up and be within 5 feet. So the rogue doesn't have to act now if they don't want to. They could wait until somebody else steps up. But the cleric right now is going to take their action. So I grab my dice, which is a 20-sided dice. The cleric is using their war hammer, and I'm going to pull out that particular character sheet so you can see it. So right here on the character sheet it says Warhammer. It's a +4, so I'm going to roll my attack for +4. 20-sided dice, I rolled a 2, +4 is only coming to 6, and unfortunately that's not equal to or greater than the armor class of a skeleton. A skeleton has an armor class of 13, so that's a miss, so no damage, but that's alright, it's not the end of the world. We move on and we pick up on the next character, which is going to be the fighter. I'm going to bring that character sheet in, and the fighter moves up 5, 10, 15. Now at this point the rogue decides, I'm going to take my ready action. It's time to actually do some damage. So instead of using the fighter's action, which we could, I'm going to go straight to the rogue. So they've stipulated they're going to make that action at a particular time. How's it going, Bromos? Okay, so here's our rogue. As I said before, short sword is the attack we're going to use. It's a +5, so roll your 20-sided dice. I got a 5, so 5 plus 5 is only 10. Unfortunately not equal to or greater than the armor class of a skeleton, which is 13. So that's a miss. Never mind, don't get to get the sneak attack damage after all. What a shame. Okay, move that character sheet out of the way, and we go back to the fighter. The fighter is moving up, going to use their great axe. They already had it out. Probably sensible if you're walking around to make sure you have your great axe out and ready to go. So I rolled your 20-sided dice. I rolled a 10, and I'm going to add the 5 for the great axe attack, which is a 15, which is greater than the armor class of a skeleton, which we said was 13. So you hit. So fortunately you get to roll the big dice. It's one of those 12-sided dice, this one right here. So grab that, roll it, and you're going to add +3. I rolled only a 2, which is unfortunate. So that's 5 damage on the skeleton. So we remove 5 points from the skeleton. Now, if you were to hit the skeleton with something like a bludgeoning weapon, they're vulnerable to that sort of damage. It hasn't been hit by bludgeoning damage yet, so unfortunately that's not going to be a great benefit to anybody, but it takes a few hit points. So the skeleton has 13 hit points. It took 5 damage. It's now reduced to 8 hit points. And you can describe that in any way you like. Maybe it's a chipped bone or something like that. Okay, so now we're up to the wizard. We'll move this character sheet out of the way and we'll grab the wizard character sheet. Now the wizard should have, if they've been sensible, made sure they cast Mage Armor. Now this particular wizard from the Dungeons & Dragons starter set does in fact have Mage Armor. So one of the slots has already been used. So you're not necessarily going to have to worry about running out of spells just yet. You do have at least one more spell you can cast. But you do have cantrips. And what we're going to do is we're going to utilise something called Ray of Frost. And on here you'll find under spellcasting ability there's a +5 for any spell attack. So that's what we're going to utilise. I'll move this out of the way so we get our wizard to move on in so they can see the skeletons. Now these characters here standing in the way are going to create cover. So if you want to get rid of cover, try to line yourself up in such a way that they can't be blocked. Unfortunately it's not possible. So if you're dealing with soft creatures, it's a +2 to the skeleton. So instead of their armor class being 13, because of the cover from the characters, that's going to be adding 2, so that's 15 for their armor class now. These particular skeletons are not necessarily holding shields. I've just got skeletons with shields, by the way, so if you're wondering why I haven't added that, that's the reason why. How's it going, Alcoholic Father? So what happens when it is hit with bludgeoning? So we'll deal with that. We're going to come around to another round and I'll show you exactly how that works very, very shortly. But let's deal with the Ray of Frost that the wizard's going to use. So grab your 20-sided dice, roll it and add your +5 for your spell attack modifier. So I rolled a 9, okay, and I'm going to add 5. That comes to a total of 14. Unfortunately, the armor class of the skeletons is now 15 because of the cover. It wasn't before, but it is now. So that Ray of Frost will miss. And that is our first round of combat. We've got through. Nicely done. It's time to roll rounds to the top of the initiative order again. And the top of the initiative order is in fact the rogue, who had a 13. So I'm going to grab that particular sheet. I'm not going to swap these out all the time unless people absolutely want to, but I will try to do it as often as I can. Okay, it's time for the rogue to take their action. They decide that they want to get that sneak attack damage on the skeleton. It's not going to happen yet, not until somebody's within 5 feet. Oh, actually, there is somebody within 5 feet, so we can. So take your 20-sided dice. You're going to need 2 dice this time, because the short sword does piercing damage. It's a 1d6 or 6-sided dice. Grab another dice for your sneak attack damage, because your sneak attack is a a 6-sided dice, and I'm going to roll all of these all at the same time, just to speed things up a bit. Okay, so my attack was +5, I add 5, unfortunately the rogue misses again. It's not going too well, unfortunately. I'm sure that the rogue will eventually strike something. Next we move on to the cleric. Now the cleric has got what's called a bludgeoning weapon. It's got a warhammer. And somebody was just asking a second ago, I believe Alcoholic Father was asking what happens when you do damage with a bludgeoning weapon. We're going to find out right now. So using the warhammer, grab your 20-sided dice. Our warhammer does an 8-sided dice worth of damage. So we'll grab that, we'll roll both of those at the same time. We're going to target this one that's already been damaged to try to take something down. Okay, I rolled a 10, which is certainly a lot better than what was going on before. So 10 plus 4 is 14. And that is good enough to hit the skeletons. There's no cover involved because I'm not shooting past anybody. The armor class of the skeletons is a 13. There's no cover. So it does hit. So we get to take that damage. Well, I've rolled a 2 on my 8-sided dice, which is really low. It says here 1d8 plus 2 bludgeoning. So that means I do a total of 4 bludgeoning. Now the thing with vulnerability is you're going to do double the damage. So instead of 4 damage bludgeoning, it's now 8 because the skeleton is vulnerable. And what that means is he just pounds this thing into bones, loose bones. Okay, so bludgeoning damage, skeletons are vulnerable to it, and you do double the damage. Very, very simple. Alright, moving on. We'll get past the... where is it? We've done the rogue, we have done the cleric, and it's now time to move on to the fighter. So the fighter has got one more skeleton left to deal with. I'm going to move this skeleton out of the way. He's collateral damage. You can move around and provide a better view for the rest of the party if you want to. In fact, before the fighter moves, it is possible for the cleric to decide to move as well. You can move around, okay, you can move between your own character and an enemy character. You just can't move between enemy characters if there was 2. So you can move around and provide a bit more, a better advantage for the wizard. We'll move this character up, come around here, and the fighter is going to take their turn. And I'll grab that character sheet right now. Where is it? There we go. So that's that great axe that I was talking about. So we get rid of that little dice. We want the big dice there. 20-sided dice, 12-sided dice for our damage, and swings away. And what do we get? We get a really low number on our 20-sided dice. I rolled a 4, plus 5 is 9, so it misses. Well, that was a shame. Never mind. Next time. I guess it'll be just next time. Okay. So moving down the order. Oops, I think I've just missed somebody. I missed the skeletons. So, apologise for that. I should have made sure the skeletons went in the initiative order of 11. This is a problem when you're doing things live stream. I assume the same rules apply for resistance. By reverse, yes, you're correct, Alcoholic Dad. Yes, you take half the damage when you're dealing with resistance. If they are immune to damage, you take no damage from that. So if they're immune to a particular type, you take no damage. Okay, so let's make an attack with these skeletons. I'm actually kind of glad I didn't use them, but we'll do it now. Reconnoiter. Make one attack with the skeleton that's still here, since I missed him out. Sorry about that, skeleton. So we roll a 20-sided dice, and on the stat block it says +4 to hit. So I rolled a 1. Well, that didn't help. It's a shame. I must have been foreseen. That's why I've skipped their turn. So a 1 on a 20-sided dice to hit is an automatic miss. There's no such thing as an automatic failure with a skill check, but it does occur with a roll to hit. So we don't need to worry about the skeleton, thankfully for that. What if I rolled for the second one if it had its turn? Oh, that's a critical. Let's just say that we take another hit with the skeleton. So a critical, a 20-sided dice roll on a hit means you are going to get to double the dice that you roll when you're doing your damage. Okay, I'm going to have this skeleton take their attack on the fighter. Why not? That's the one that seems to be doing a significant amount of damage. Or I can target the cleric. It doesn't really matter. Skeletons aren't that bright. They will just sort of go after who is sort of closest. You can pick either one. I'm going to go after the fighter simply because I've got the armor class right here. It makes it easy for me. Okay, so you've rolled. Now the damage for a skeleton is 6-sided dice. Whoops. 6-sided dice, and I'm going to double that. So I grab another 6-sided dice to add to that when I'm doing my damage. Now there's a modifier that goes with damage. So it says here +2. You only add the modifier once. Don't add it twice. So roll your 2 6-sided dice because it's a critical hit and it's a really bad one. I've rolled a 6 and a 6 and then I add 2. So 6 and 6 is 12 plus 2 is 14. So 14 damage on our fighter, which is not good. Our fighter here only has 12 hit points. That means that takes them down to 0. If you get hit and you're knocked down to 0, you are unconscious. So 1 unconscious fighter. It's a good thing I struck the fighter and nobody else. Now if the attack had been 24 damage, then that would have outright killed the fighter. But the fighter is only dying. It's not dead, it's just dying. Okay, moving on in our initiative order. Back to where we were supposed to be, since I made a little bit of a botch up there. The last one in the initiative order is going to be the wizard for round 2. Now, there's no cover to deal with. Remember before I was talking about having to add a +2 for the cover because of people being in the way? Well, you don't have to worry about that now. Because there are nobody in the way and they've moved around the back and provided a better clear sight for the wizard, it's going to be possible to strike much more easily with your spell. So we'll use that Ray of Frost again and see if we can make it hit. So 20-sided dice, rolling the 20-sided dice, we add that to our +5. So I got a 9 plus 5 is 14, which is more than enough to hit the skeleton. Now the skeleton is not only going to take damage, it's also slowed. With something like Ray of Frost, you don't add your modifier, your spell casting modifier to the Ray of Frost cantrip. It's just a straight 8-sided dice worth of damage. So whatever I roll on here, that's how much damage the skeleton takes. So I roll that. Okay, I rolled a 5, so it takes 5 cold damage. And it's not resistant to cold damage, it's not vulnerable, it's not immune to that, it will just take that. So it normally has 13 hit points, it takes 5 of those, it's now down to 8 hit points. Hopefully so far all of this has been reasonably clear. I'm just going to keep going. Alright, back to the top of the initiative order. We're now at initiative round 3 and we start with the rogue. Now the rogue can make the choice if they want to try to stabilise their downed character, or they can leave it for somebody else to do. At this point I think the rogue is going to decide it's time to get in there and get stuck in before somebody else gets hurt. So we're going to try to go with our sneak attack damage. The cleric is within 5 foot, there's an ally there, so they can use that sneak attack damage. And we'll grab another dice for that. We'll roll all of that all at the same time. I'm just going to shuffle out these character sheets so that you can see these. I know that people are jumping into the room from time to time, so I need to keep up with that. There we go. So our short sword does +5. I'm going to roll all the dice all at the same time. So the 20-sided dice, I rolled a 10, add 5, that's 15. 15 is more than the armor class of the skeleton, which is 13. And my damage is good. I rolled a 5 and a 6. So I add those together, comes to 11. And then I add the modifier that's listed for damage only once. I don't add it to both dice, just once, a +3. So 11 plus 3 is 14. 14 is more than enough to take out a skeleton. Skeletons are not resistant to any kind of damage. They are immune to things like poison damage, but they're not resistant. So that will do far more damage than it has hit points. Now when a creature is hit and reduced to 0 hit points, normally that means they are dead, they have perished, they are gone. The only time that an NPC or a monster that is reduced to 0 hit points might have a death dying save or might not die outright is if the Dungeon Master deems that particular monster, NPC or creature important enough that it should have those sorts of attributes. So skeleton goes down from the rogue and it's now dead. Okay, we'll remove that. We still have a situation where the fighter is going to pass away if we're not too careful. So the rogue has taken their turn. We don't need to stay in initiative at this present time. If you are concerned that you can't stabilize a character, you might continue in rounds, but there is a cleric nearby. They are capable of stabilizing the fighter who is bleeding out, or just casting Cure Wounds. And I think that's probably a good time to start using the cleric's Cure Wounds because they do have access to it. So I'll grab that character sheet right here. Now this particular cleric is a very special one. It's not a normal cleric. One, it's going to be getting a 8-sided dice for the Cure Wounds spell. But on top of that, it has an ability called Disciple of Life. Your healing spells are particularly effective. Whenever you restore hit points to a creature with a spell of 1st level or higher, the creature regains additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell level. Now, Cure Wounds can only be cast at level 1 for a level 1 character, so that'll be 2 plus 1, so that's 3 on top of whatever I roll for the actual spell. So I'll roll for the spell now. So I rolled a 5, and I add my spell casting modifier for the cleric, which is Wisdom, and that's a +3, so 5 plus 3 is 8. So I'm going to get 8 hit points back, plus the additional hit points that I gained by the Disciple of Life. As I said, you get 2 plus your spell level, so that's 3. So in a total of 8 plus 3 is 11. So now the fighter is not bleeding out, they're now conscious, and instead of having only 0 hit points, they're now on 11 hit points, and we'll just make a note of that right here, 11 hit points. They're not back to full health, but probably good enough to keep going on. Okay, that is basically how a combat would roll out, and I am happy to keep going through. We can keep exploring this little location and rolling you through different encounters. I have another one that I can do with a swarm. Swarms are a little bit tricky because they have a different type of reach than other creatures. Most creatures have a 5-foot reach, and you only need to be adjacent to them. So we can play that out if you like. But are there any questions so far? Anything that you want me to highlight? Whether it's a player character question or it's a question as the Dungeon Master that you might have, I am happy to answer those questions. I see I've had a few questions in the comments, not an awful lot, but we'll keep going. Let's assume that the party is continuing to explore the location. So, first thing is the wizard's definitely not going to be going first. They've got 2 choices. They can try to move the boulder. Combining their strengths together, they might be able to push it out of the way if they want to, but instead they decide to take the path of least resistance. There was this odd statue down here with these shiny runes, and the parties decide that's the best place to go. Alright, so we'll let the rogue lead off, and the fighter, cleric, and wizard. Okay, so you can ask for another stealth check now if you want to. Same process as before. Exactly the same process. I don't want to do another stealth check because I've already sort of highlighted how that works in the first part of this live stream, unless somebody is in the live stream who wants me to do it again. As I said, you can break it up. You can use a group check. I know some Dungeon Masters don't like using group checks. They prefer individual checks. One of the reasons for using the group check is primarily so that one person within the party doesn't ruin it for everybody else. And there's another way of playing out something like a stealth check. What you can do is if half the group or part of the group are successful, like half the group is successful, you still give the group surprise, but you decide, okay, well, unfortunately the 2 that weren't stealthy don't get surprise. It's a different way of dealing with the game. You don't necessarily have to do it this way. There's just another way of applying it if you don't want every single person to benefit from somebody else who got a higher score. But the concept behind group checks and stealth is if you score really high, you are assisting somebody who got really low. And that's how it balances out. So a group of 4, only 2 individuals in the group need to be successful for the whole group to pass. So they walk into here and there are skulls on the floor, there's a door over here, and they can see that there is a boulder over here. And there's those shiny runes that I was talking about and what looks like some sort of statue that's holding a mace in their hand. So they're moving up, and they're waiting for the get-go from the rogue. The rogue should be doing their job. This particular rogue is really, really bad at actually scouting out. I actually feel like somebody like the cleric should be doing it, but we don't really want to be having the cleric lead the party, particularly if they get stuck in a really bad situation or walk into a trap. Okay, so exploring the cavern, the party moves in. It seems all safe and good, and there are fine cracks in the wall of this cavern over here. And as the rogue is exploring and looking around, and if you're actually stating that you're looking for something in a particular location, your dungeon master is probably either going to use what's called the passive perception, which is a straight 10 for this rogue. It's just 10 plus your perception modifier, or they'll ask for a dice roll. I'm going to do a dice roll simply because if they're stipulating that they're doing it, I assume that they are actively looking. Unless you are worried that they will metagame by seeing the number. Often using a passive check is just to mitigate players like, oh, I rolled really low, can I roll again? If you don't want that to happen, then don't ask for an active roll. Okay, so we'll make a roll because I'm only going to allow the player 1 attempt. So I rolled a 12. And I'm going to add the perception modifier for our rogue, which is 0, unfortunately. So the perception check is 12. Very, very simple. Looking over here in the cracks. Now, in those particular cracks, there is in fact a creature, and it's actually trying to hide, or it's being quite quiet. And this is our swarm that I was talking about. Now, with your swarm, I'm dealing with the swarm of rats. There's a swarm of rats in those cave cracks, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make what's called a stealth check. We've talked about the stealth check already, so have a look at the monster manual on page 339, and it says swarm of rats, and under that there is no skill for the swarm of rats that says stealth. So what do? Well, stealth uses dexterity. So you're going to use the dexterity modifier. It's as simple as that, nothing to it. Because they're in the cracks, I'm also going to give them advantage. I'm not just going to roll a 20-sided dice. I feel like it would be quite difficult to actually spot them in there. So I'm going to grant them advantage because of the location they are in. Does that make sense? So when you roll advantage, you take the highest result rather than the lowest result, which is what disadvantage would be. So I take my dice, I roll it, and I take the highest result. I got a 17, my lowest result was a 7, 17 plus the 0 for our stealth check. So these particular rats have been hiding pretty well, and they managed to get surprise on this little rogue right here. Out of the cracks they swarm. So we have yet again another combat. Now you can compare the rest of the party if you feel like they would be looking out for danger. You can compare the 17 for the stealth check on the rats with the passive check of any of the characters that you have at your table who weren't immediately in that location. Or you could state, look, they were too busy, they were looking in a different direction. Really, it's up to you as a dungeon master. So the fighter only has a passive check or passive perception of 13, so would never notice these little rats popping up, even if they were staying alert. The cleric has a passive perception of 13 as well, hasn't got a hope, because you have to get equal to it. If you don't get equal to the number that the stealth check is, then you will not detect them. Same with a wizard. The wizard has a passive check or passive perception of 13. So there's no hope of actually spotting this particular encounter. So we definitely had surprise on the players. And now it is time to determine initiative. Same process as we went through before. I'm going to start with the little rats because it's nice and easy. Now you'll notice, as I said before, there is no initiative modifier for the rat swarm. It's actually going to be flat 0. So you just roll your 20-sided dice to make your check to determine their initiative. They are going to be acting first anyway in the first round, it doesn't matter, but I rolled a 10, we'll need that later on for further rounds. So I rolled a 10 for our rats, and it's just a straight roll for them. Next we'll do the wizard. The initiative modifier for a wizard is a +2, so I roll the 20-sided dice. I roll a 2, +2 is only 4 for the wizard, it's not very high. This wizard keeps rolling very, very low. Move that out of the way. And we'll shuffle that character sheet over here. And the next one is the cleric, which is a -1. So roll the 20-sided dice. I rolled a 6. -1 is 5 for the cleric. Oh, they're doing really, really well today. Shuffle the next character sheet out of the way. And our fighter, -1 as well. Roll a 12, so 12 -1 is 11 for the fighter. You can see how it's forming. Whoever has the highest initiative is going to get to act first, and whoever has the lowest initiative is going to be acting last. Okay, next our rogue has a decent initiative modifier. We get a roll decent on the dice, right? Okay, I got a 15 +3 is 18 for the rogue. Okay, now I'm going to order my initiative. Before I take the surprise round, I'm going to order my initiative so I'm all ready to go. So I'm going to bring the sheet down so you can see. I'm going to fold it over so you can't see what we were doing last time to make it a little bit easier. Right here. So our cleric, our rogue has got the highest initiative, so we'll mark them as going first. The next initiative that's highest is the fighter at 11, so we'll mark that as 2. Second. Next one is the dungeon master, the rat swarm, it's 3. After that is the cleric at 4. And lastly, the wizard again is a 5. Okay, so this is the order of initiative, but as I said, all the characters are surprised. They didn't detect the rat swarm, and that means that good old dungeon master is going to get to go first, or the rat swarms anyway. So what happens when you're surprised, as I said before, is you can't take any actions, no bonus actions, no movement, no reactions, nothing. Alright, so let's have a look at what our rat swarm is going to do. One of the things with a rat swarm is they cannot attack when they are adjacent. They have no reach. Their reach is literally 0. It is nada. You have to be right on top of the player character to actually do any kind of damage to them. Which means this rat swarm has to move into the space with the rogue. So I'm going to put the rat swarm underneath. This just represents that they are swarming all over our rogue and trying to bite away. So if you have a look on page 339, it states there is a bite. Rat swarms are pretty simple. It isn't really difficult to run. It's fairly simple. It's just a +2 to whatever you roll on a 20-sided dice. Now, I'm not going to state that the rat swarm has advantage, because they had to move out of the cover and the cracks to attack our rogue. If say the rats were able to have little bows and were able to shoot from the cracks, then yes, maybe I would give them advantage, but they can be seen. Even though they're getting to act first, they don't necessarily get advantage. I roll my 20-sided dice, I'll just get that one out of the way, and I roll the 19, you add 2 for the bite attack for your swarm, which is +2, so that is 21. Now 21 is much more than the armor class of a rogue. The rogue only has an armor class of 14, so definitely going to hit. And your damage is really simple. Now you need to pay attention here. It is it's either a flat 7, so that's your average. I often use the average. There's usually a number when it says here hit 7, and then in brackets it gives you the damage in dice, which is 2d6 piercing damage. I often will use the average rather than rolling the dice to determine the damage. You do not have to roll the damage for your monsters, particularly if you want to speed up play. And one of the reasons why I don't do that and only roll for the attacks is because then I can just roll a whole bunch of 20-sided dice and then I just spit out the damage. And also it flattens it out, particularly at level 1, where it's possible to do huge amounts of damage, particularly if you get a critical, as was indicated by the first encounter with the skeletons. Now, if I'd rolled a 20, I would have not used the flat average. I probably wouldn't have gone double the 7. I wouldn't have gone 7 plus 7. I would have usually rolled to determine what the damage is with a critical. But this is one of the ways you can deal with that. Okay, so definitely hits the rogue. So we're going to do some damage. So rolling our 2 6-sided dice. So I'll grab our 6-sided dice here. Now there's no modifier for the bite attack. It's just a flat 6-sided dice, and you just roll those. So 2 of these. So I rolled a 1 and a 4. So you add those together. 1 and 4 is 5. So the rogue is going to take a grand total of 5 piercing. So we just remove that, and it's now on. So this rogue has only got 9 hit points. Remove 5. It's now got 4 hit points. Very difficult to. I feel like I'm trying to draw or write sideways. I'm going to just move myself just a fraction. There we go. That's a bit better. All right, now you can see it. One of the things you need to look at is if the swarm is ever reduced to half strength. If the swarm is ever reduced to half strength, then that changes how much damage it will output, and that's stated underneath under the swarm of rats. So if the swarm is reduced to half of its hit points or fewer, then instead of doing 3 hit points worth of damage, or instead of doing 7 points of damage, or 2d6, it's going to do 3 as an average, or 1 6-sided dice worth of damage. Does that make sense? So it gets weaker. The fewer rats there are, the less damage it can do to the target. And as long as the characters are within the same space as the swarm, it can continue to attack. Alright, so we're done with our Dungeon Master. That's round 1 out of the way and done with. We now move to the top of the initiative order, and top of the initiative order was our rogue. Unfortunately, I've got that character sheet out right now. So the rogue, you have a choice. You don't have to necessarily leave the space that has the rats in. Honestly, you do not need to worry about doing that. You can attack them while they're in the same space as you, or you can move out of that space if you want to. This particular rogue is going to stay in that space and make their attack, but they're going to ready an attack rather than taking their attack right now, because they don't have advantage, they don't have anybody within 5 feet, and they want that sneak attack damage. So we're going to put our 20-sided dice there as a reminder, using the short sword, and we're hopefully going to get our sneak attack damage, which is 1d6. I'm just going to have a glass of water, guys, because I'm doing a lot of talking. Right, sorry about that. So our rogue has read in action, and their action is they are going to attack once one of their allies is within 5 feet. That's it. As soon as that happens, they attack. The next one in the initiative order is the fighter, who had initiative 11. So our fighter can move up, seeing what's happened to the rogue, and this is a good opportunity to move into a position and allow space for everybody else to get around. So you can move a bit further around. You can move around to here. You won't be attacked with an attack of opportunity, you don't have to worry about that. And I'll grab the fighter character sheet. I'm going to use that great axe again. Try to stick to the weapons that will do the most amount of damage if you can when you're playing your game. So 20-sided dice to hit, and a 12-sided dice for your damage for your great axe. We'll roll both of them at the same time. Okay, well, this is good. I'm doing better this time. I rolled a 17, add 5 for the great axe, because that's the attack modifier, comes to 22. Now 22 is greater than the armor class of a rat swarm. The rat swarm has only got an armor class of 10, so that's certainly equal to or greater than. So you strike the target and you're going to do a stupendous amount of damage. Well, certainly that's what you think you are going to do. I rolled a 9 for the damage dice. I'm going to add 3 for slashing, so that's 12 slashing. The problem with a swarm is they have resistance, damage resistance, which we just talked about not so long ago. They have damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing and slashing damage. So even though I did a grand total of 12 slashing damage, the swarm doesn't take 12, it takes half of that. So you divide the 12 down to 6. So it's only going to take 6 damage. It's got 22 hit points, so now it's got 16 hit points because we take 6 away. So what would have happened if I rolled an odd number? I know somebody's probably sitting there asking, what happens if I got an odd number for my damage? So instead of getting like 12 damage, I got 11 damage. Well, you round down. So you take half of 11 is 5.5 and you round down, it becomes 5 instead. That's how you do it. You don't round up, you round down. And I've done a video on that particular topic if you want to go and watch it. Alright, so that's the first thing that's going to happen, and then we'll move on and we'll go to the next person in the initiative order. Now, remember the rogue said as soon as somebody moved into 5 feet, they're going to take that ready to action and have that sneak attack damage. The fighter's there, they've made an attack, they can take that action. Away you go. You roll your dice. So we'll get rid of the fighter. We're back to the rogue. You roll all the dice at the same time just to speed things up. So I rolled an 8. 8 plus 5. It's a grand total of 13. 13 is greater than the armor class of the rats. And so I'm going to do my sneak attack damage, which is 6 plus 5 is 11 plus 3 piercing. Okay, so that's 11 plus 3, that's 14 damage. It's piercing damage, and unfortunately, as I said before, the rats have resistance to piercing, so it's only going to be half of 14, which is 7. So the rat swarm currently has 16 hit points. We'll reduce that down to 9 because we're going to take off 7 hit points. Pretty clear so far. I know that swarms can be a bit tricky for sometimes, you know, it's sort of, you're dealing with resistances, you're dealing with immunities to stuff, you're also dealing with the fact that as you reduce it, it's going to perform less damage. Okay, alright, so we've done the fighter, we've done the rogue. Next person in the initiative order, it's round 2, is the DM, which is the rat swarm. Now rat swarms at this point, you can decide that it's taken enough and the rats have had enough and they can flee if they want. But it's perfectly fine. That's a legitimate way of dealing with it. I'm not going to have them run away, but if you were to have them run away, how would you deal with that? One of the best ways with dealing with making like a morale check is to make a DC check. I usually use something like a wisdom check. So what I will do is I roll a 20-sided dice, and if the creature gets 10 or more, then they stay in the fight. If they get less, then they flee. The reason being is fleeing from combat usually gets you killed. So so a wise creature won't flee, particularly when they know that they're going to they could get taken out. So we roll this dice, and the wisdom modifier for our rat swarm is only 0, so it's pretty low. So we'll roll to see. So I rolled an 8 plus 0. So 8 would be less than 10. So the bad result would be they would run away. But I'm not going to have them run away. If they got a 10, then they would stay in the fight. That's how I usually play out something like a morale check in the game. Alright, let's make an attack because they're going to stay there. Now they have been reduced in hit points. They used to have 22 hit points. There's only 9 hit points left for the rat swarm. So that means, remember we were talking about how a rat swarm does less damage if they are reduced by half their hit points or more. So we take our 20-sided dice to do our damage, and normally the damage would be 2 6-sided dice, but now it's only 1. Reduced in strength does less damage. So we'll roll both of these dice at the same time for the rat swarm as it attacks. I'm going to just shuffle those dice out of the way because it's just going to be confusing for you. and they can't attack the fighter. Even though the fighter is adjacent, they have to be in the same square as the miniature, or at the same square as the player character if you're playing Theatre of the Mind. I'm using miniatures simply because it's easier to represent and describe things as I go. So roll your attack for your rat swarm. I rolled a 9. They only get to add a +2, and guess what? +2 and 9 is 11. None of these characters have an armor class of 11, so it's not going to hit. You only get one attack with your rat swarm. Don't assume that you get multiple attacks. The damage that it does represents many little rats biting away all at once. So you don't have to roll multiple attacks, you're only rolling once for them. Okay, so rat swarm is done. Moving on, down our initiative, it's next is the cleric. So the cleric next gets to act. So the cleric can move up here, come on round. As I said, it's a good idea to try to leave an open path for those who like to shoot at a target. So this particular character is going to move along and make sure that the wizard has a nice line of sight for their ranged attacks. Now this is a pretty simple fight. It's not sort of the situation where you think, okay, I need to unload spells or anything like that. There are options for the cleric to cast spells if you want to. This particular cleric has a whole bunch of different options, something like light, sacred flame, and dermatology, bless and cure wounds, and you get to select a bunch of other spells as well, which I haven't worried about doing. I'm just going to deal with bless and cure wounds for this particular workshop. But we're not going to cast any of those spells. We're going to stick with using the bludgeoning damage. Even though the rats are resistant to it, the characters might not necessarily know this, unless you make something like a knowledge check, which you could do, and in fact that's what we're going to get the cleric to do. Okay, one of the best characters for making a knowledge check is the wizard, but there's no reason why something like the cleric can't make a knowledge check about something like a rat swarm. So what sort of knowledge check would we make for a rat swarm? I would say nature. Seems like an appropriate skill to use. Making a knowledge check about monsters doesn't usually burn up any of your actions, unless you have a dungeon master who stipulates that you have to use an action or an interaction or a bonus action or something like that to actually use it. You either know the information or you don't. Okay? So I roll your 20-sided dice for your knowledge check. I rolled a 4 plus 0 for the cleric's knowledge on nature. They don't really know that the rats are resistant to bludgeoning. It would be much more likely that they would know something about it if they got a score that was higher than 10. I would say something like a 15 would let them know, okay, this creature is probably resistant to this type of damage because of the nature of it, or because they've had experience with that particular creature or monster. But turn's not over, they've moved. They get a chance to do something else, which they will do. They're going to use that war hammer again. We'll make an attack, and our bludgeoning damage is a 8-sided dice. I'm going to roll all of that all at the same time and try and squash some rats. So I rolled a 2 plus 4 for my attack is only going to come to a total of 6. So I don't need to worry about the damage because it doesn't even strike. 6 is definitely not going to hit the armor class of a rat swarm, which is 10. Okay, equal to or greater than for your attacks. Okay, moving that out of the way. So we've done our cleric, and now it's time to move on to our wizard. Now our wizard moves around, got a nice clear line of sight, and we're going to use our Ray of Frost. There are other types of spells you can use with your wizard. This particular wizard has rather an odd selection of spells as far as I can tell. The cantrips that they know are Mage Hand, Prestidigitation, Ray of Frost, and Shocking Grasp. Shocking Grasp works very similar to Ray of Frost, but you have to be up and able to touch the target. Otherwise it doesn't work. I'm not going to utilise something like Shocking Grasp in this situation because it wouldn't be sensible to do so. You don't want to put yourself into a position where you are threatened. Does any cover apply in this situation? Probably not. You could if you wanted to, but I think it would be inappropriate to apply cover to something like rats when you're using something like the Ray of Frost, just because they should be reasonably easy to see. Okay, is there a chance to hit your ally? That's usually a Dungeon Master choice. I don't usually apply that sort of thing. Friendly fire is a rather cruel way to play the game. Okay, so how do we work out our Ray of Frost? So we need a 20-sided dice for our wizard, and we need an 8-sided dice for our damage, and we're going to roll them at the same time. I rolled a 10. I'm going to add 5 for my spellcasting attack modifier, so that's 10 plus 5 is 15, more than enough to hit the rats, and the damage I do is 5. Remember, with Ray of Frost, you do not add your spellcasting modifier to that spell. You're only going to apply the dice roll, nothing else. And this applies with just about all of the cantrips. The cantrips are just usually a straight dice roll to determine damage. So, hit the target, and we're going to do, this is cold damage, and it's 5. Now, the swarm of rats does not have resistance to cold damage. So they currently have 9 hit points. Reduce that by 5, and we get down to 4. So there's 4 hit points left on the rat swarm. There's only a few rats left. It's almost a done deal. Very, very simple. Okay, moving back to the top of the initiative order, and also too, if you feel like you're in a position that might be threatening you, you don't have to just move there. You can move again. One of the things with Dungeons & Dragons 5e is you can split up your movement. You can move around a little bit further, whatever speed you have left, and make yourself basically move further away or move back behind cover if you want to, if you think that's going to be an advantage to you. I don't see too many questions in there, so we'll just keep working our way through the initiative. People seem to be reasonably happy with what I'm doing so far. Okay, so back to round 3, top of the initiative. It's the rogue's turn. Now the rogue could step out of the situation, or they could just keep going with it. There are 2 characters within 5 feet, and because there's 2 characters within 5 feet, they get their sneak attack damage. We'll make the attack right now, so I'll grab that. No advantage, but we will get our 6-sided dice, and I'll just move this character sheet out of the way so that we're dealing with rogue rather than the other characters. Sorry about that. Okay, so using a short sword again, and roll the dice all at once. The red dice represents the sneak attack damage for a level 1 rogue. The other blue dice here, 6-sided dice, represents the damage you would do with a short sword. Okay, so I rolled a 14, so 14 plus 5 is 19, more than enough to hit the swarm. And the damage that is done is I rolled a 1 and a 3, that comes to 4. Add the 3 piercing, that's 7. Now remember, 7 damage, or piercing damage from a short sword, is not really going to do that much damage because they have resistance. So half of 7 is 3.5, then round down to 3. So you're only doing 3 points of damage, not the full 7. Now the rat swarm had 4 hit points, goes down to 1 hit point. They're almost gone, almost wiped them out. So what happens if the rogue decides to move out of the space with the swarm? Do they get to have an attack of opportunity? I know that's a question that people are going to start asking. If this rogue moves out, do they get an attack of opportunity? Well, that's a good question. Well, yes, they can. If you're moving out of the space that they threaten, you get to do your attack. If these characters here, so the rogue can do that, if these characters here who are up close within 5 foot of the rat swarm were to move back without disengaging means you don't get an attack of opportunity, but if these characters moved back, they would not get an attack of opportunity because remember, the rat swarm has no reach, it's only 0. So they can't take attacks of opportunity on any creature that's adjacent. But if you're in the swarm and you move out of the swarm, there is going to be an attack of opportunity. So we'll do that now, simply because why not? It seems like a sensible thing to do, right? And also it helps illustrate the point. So you're moving out, the rat swarm gets to attack, take a 20-sided dice. Remember it's reduced, there's only a few, so only get 1d6 to roll for your damage. and I rolled a 7, add 2, there's only 9, so the rat swarm misses the rogue as it moves out of its reach. Must be in the actual space though to take an attack of opportunity on a character. Okay, rat swarms or any kind of swarm can't make attacks of opportunity if you're adjacent. Doesn't work. Right, so that is the rogue's turn. The rogue doesn't have any other things that can really do other than it could continue to move further away. Just moving once is fine, but you know, if you're taking the opportunity to get out and taking that attack of opportunity, you might decide, well, I've had enough, I want to move a bit further away, I've only got a few hit points left, so I'm going to move a bit further away. So that's exactly what it's going to do. Right over here. So 5, 10, 15, 20, okay. You have a speed of 25 feet for your rogue, if you're wondering, which means 5 squares of movement. Right, rogue's taken their turn, we're almost done, hopefully the fighter will finish the deal. It's the fighter's turn. I'll grab that character sheet so I can place that in front of you. We're going to stick with using the Great Axe. One of the features here that I haven't gone over is the Second Wind, which you can use as a bonus action, but it's really not necessary. The fighter's not seriously hurt, and therefore it's not really going to be useful in this situation. But you can use that as a bonus action, and that allows you to roll a 10-sided dice and add your fighter level, which would be 1, and that's how many hit points you regain by using your bonus action. You get this Second Wind back once you take a short or a long rest, for those of you who are unaware. Alright, so let's make an attack with our fighter. 20-sided dice for the Great Axe, and we need the big dice, that's the 12-sided dice, and we'll roll and try and finish off the last of the rats. Okay, I didn't do a very good job. I rolled a 3, add 5 for the attack modifier on the Great Axe, which is 8, and therefore it doesn't matter what the damage was because it misses. Because 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 is not enough to hit the armor class of the rats, which has an armor class of 10. You need to get equal to or greater than. Alright, so fighters are done, and we move down our initiative, and it's now back to the rats. I'm going to take the opportunity to make another morale check. Now, as the Dungeon Master, you do not have to roll to determine morale. You might decide that, look, I'm not going to bother rolling a 20-sided dice and doing a wisdom check of DC 10 to see if they stay in the fight or not. I'm just going to have them run. It's one of the easiest ways to get combat completed. This fight is all but done. One rat is probably the only thing that's left from the swarm, or just a couple of rats if you want to describe it as being more than 22 rats. You know, 22 hit points might be 22 rats. If you want to describe it as being a much greater swarm of rats than that, there's only a few rats left. So you can decide, okay, they are just going to flee. Now, fleeing means that these two characters can take an attack of opportunity on the fleeing rats. It's called the opportunity attack. So both these characters can make an attack. We're going to let the fighter make that attack because I've got the character sheet here right now. It makes it nice and simple for me. I don't have to move anything around. So you get another attack as a reaction. You're not taking the attack on your turn, you're taking the attack on somebody else's turn. So roll those dice. Same thing again. Usually when you're making an opportunity attack, you need to use a melee attack. It can't be a ranged attack. And also you need to be able to see the attacker. If you can't see the attacker, you can't make the attack. And you can't usually use spells or other types of features. It's just a basic melee attack. So roll your dice. Alright, so I rolled a 9 plus 5 is a total of 14 to hit. 14 is greater than the armor class of the rats, so it's going to do some damage. I rolled an 8 on my dice for my damage. I had 3, comes to 11. Remember, it's slashing damage, so you take 11, halve that, which is 5.5, and then round down to 5, and so the rat swarm takes 5 points of damage. It only had 1 point of damage left, so it's reduced to 0, and the last of the rats are wiped out. Very, very simple. Not a hard process. It's actually one of the more simple processes. Once you get used to doing it a few times, you'll get used to the pattern and how things work. I am aware that any kind of combat in Dungeons and Dragons can be a bit daunting and a little bit scary, but hopefully this has made it reasonably clear to you that you can manage this. It is not something that's outside of your scope. I'm going to probably wrap it up. There aren't any more questions that are being placed in here. I did have a whole, I think 2 more encounters I could run through, but it's been about an hour now. I think this is probably a good place to stop. For those of you who are wondering, what's the deal, Fred, with my live streams doing a D&D 5e combat workshop, and I've marked it number 2, live. I've done one in the past. My intention was always to do more of these. It's not like I'm going to stop doing them, and you will be able to re-watch them. So if you missed some of it, you can go back and re-watch it. A lot of these are not just showing you how to run your combats as a player or a dungeon master. It's also an opportunity for you to come and ask me questions so I can play them out. Now, last time I ran a live stream, I think somebody asked me, can you please explain how swarms work? Which is why I haven't included a swarm in this video. That means there will be more D&D 5e combat workshops. This is not the only one. I'm going to come back and I will do more in the future. And if you place questions in the comments section or in the live chat, I'll get to those monsters. If you want to say, look, Fred, can you please role play out or roll out and show me how to run an encounter with something like, I don't know, a mimic or a ghost or some goblins or an ogre. I'm quite happy to do that and just run you through it so you can ask questions and you can see how it's done. Sometimes seeing how it's done is the easiest way to learn. Okay, so if you found this video helpful or informative, please share and like the video. If you're not subscribed already and you like this sort of content, I have more videos like this. I do a lot of how to play D&D videos. There's a whole bunch of them. Some are live streams, some are pre-recorded. You're welcome to have a look through my playlists and find the ones that you like. If you want to subscribe, just hit the subscribe button. There's also on my channel, beside the subscribe button, there's a button that says, it's like a bell, and that gives you occasional notifications if you want an occasional notification about when I do another video. I do videos pretty much every single day, so you're probably not going to need the notification, but if you want to have a notification, that button, the bell button, is the one you want to click. Now, if you have any questions, your opportunity is to ask them now during the live chat and the live stream. I'm not going to disappear straight away. I will hang around a little bit. If you're not part of the live stream, ask those questions in the comments below. If you have any questions and or you felt like I missed something, by all means add those and I will do my best to explain what happened. I think I have explained pretty much everything that I needed to. If you want to support my channel, keep watching my videos, watch more of them. That helps. I get a bit of ad revenue, which is great. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit. I don't do Patreon. I do have affiliate links down in the description where you can buy stuff online. I get a commission and you get, pardon me, I do get a commission from the Amazon affiliate link. You pay the same price. You don't even have to buy the thing that I've linked to. Just go through the link and buy something else. That's fine. Now, if you want to ask questions, I'm going to open it up in a second. I'm just going to do my sign out. So, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. There's my big dice. Okay, hi everybody. I'm still here. I'm not gone. I am willing to answer questions if people have questions. If they aren't, and you think that it fulfilled its purpose, that's great. As I said before, I'm going to do more videos like this. This is not the only video that will be released as a live stream. I'm trying to approach my channel like a live tutorial to people so that they have the opportunity to ask questions and see how things are done. I'm aware that maybe the angle of the camera is not necessarily the best for actually seeing how everything is playing out. If you would prefer more of a top-down view, then I can certainly give that a go and see how it works. I do have a tripod that's capable of doing that. I know that the print on the character sheets is probably very, very small and kind of hard for you to make out. but I can probably fix that by changing the view a little bit. If you want me to include the details for character sheets during the video, it's a little bit more difficult. You'll find all of the character sheets for the starter set down on the description if you want to access them. Last night I did a live stream on Twitch TV of my group playing Storm King's Thunder, and it went alright. I think it was reasonably successful. You are welcome to join us next Friday. I think we should be playing next Friday from 7:30 PM through to 11 PM New Zealand Standard Time on Friday. For a lot of you that'll be Thursday, because New Zealand's like in the future, or just runs ahead of everybody else. If we don't do the live stream play for whatever reason, so we don't have enough players, I will do a Twitch TV live stream workshop where I will go through and play a few scenarios for people. I'm certainly open to doing whatever I can to help people learn how to play, answer your questions, or just see how it's done. I know seeing how it's done visually can help quite a lot. Okay, I think we're done. There aren't any more comments coming through. I think we're done for today. You guys have a good time. Go get some sleep, go get some food, go get some drink. If you woke up for this, then go back to sleep. If you've got work, go back to work. Things like that. And if you've got better things to do, then by all means, this is the time to do it. And look, I really hope this was helpful to people.